In the world of high-stakes investment and enterprise, we often discuss portfolios, market cycles, and strategic acquisitions. We analyze balance sheets, calculate risk-adjusted returns, and chart pathways to financial sovereignty. But today, we are addressing a different kind of portfolio, one that has been completely wiped out. We are not talking about a market crash, but a life crash. This is for the man who has lost everything, the assets, the family, the reputation, and is now drowning in a sea of liabilities. A debt that is not just financial, but existential. To you, I say this: do not liquidate your most valuable asset, your own life. Do not seek refuge in the false solvency of alcohol or the final, irreversible exit of death. If the pressure becomes unbearable, your first action must be to call for support, to reach out to a mental health professional. It is an undeniable market truth that continuing to live under such conditions is exponentially harder than giving up. But the true courage, the ultimate long-term investment, is in choosing to live. The common perception of failure is a zero-doubt bank account, a foreclosed home, a liquidated business. But this is merely a surface-level analysis. The real bankruptcy is internal. It is a crisis of the self, where the ego, desperately clinging to the illusion of past success, wages a war against a soul that is exhausted and ready to capitulate. Your greatest undertaking now is not to recoup financial losses, but to execute the most challenging leveraged buyout in existence, rebuilding a life from a deeply negative net worth. This is not about recovering what was lost. It is about a fundamental restructuring, a complete overhaul of your internal operating system. We must pivot from a growth at Tulkas's mindset to a strategy of sustainable, foundational rebirth. To navigate this complex restructuring, we can look to an ancient but profoundly relevant strategic framework: the 3 pillars of Bushido. These are not archaic codes of a bygone era, but a timeless blueprint for resilience and regeneration, perfectly applicable to the modern crisis of self. Let us begin with the first pillar: wisdom, jur. This is not about accumulating more data or clinging to old playbooks. True wisdom begins with a radical and honest assessment of your current position. It requires you to acknowledge total failure, to audit your knowledge base, and to ruthlessly depreciate the assets that have become obsolete. The strategies, beliefs, and market assumptions that led to your initial success may now be the very liabilities that precipitated your downfall. The world has changed, your market has shifted, and you must adapt or perish. This is the moment for aggressive relearning, for acquiring new skills and new mental models suited not to the world you once dominated, but to the world as it exists today. This acquisition of new knowledge cannot be a passive academic exercise. It must be translated into decisive, practical action. The path to rebuilding starts with the courageous admission of your own mistakes. It means dismantling the fragile scaffolding of false pride and facing the unvarnished reality of your situation with the cool, detached analysis of a seasoned auditor. You must become ruthlessly honest with yourself, dissecting every miscalculation, every poor judgment, every instance where ego overrode sound strategy. This process of radical self-assessment is not an act of self-flagellation. It is the forging of character. In the unforgiving marketplace of life, character is the ultimate currency, the bedrock upon which all future value is built. It is the intangible asset that, once established, appreciates consistently over time, regardless of external market fluctuations. The next strategic move in this turnaround is a divestiture. You must aggressively cut off all non-performing assets and toxic liabilities that are draining your limited resources. This means severing ties with toxic relationships, the fair-weather partners, the sycophants, the enablers who applauded your ascent but offered no value in your reconstruction. It means liquidating the extravagant lifestyle, the status symbols, and the material dependencies that served only to inflate the ego. And most importantly, it means ceasing the production of excuses, the self-deceptive narratives that blame external factors for internal failures. This process culminates in a ritual I call spiritual seppuku. It is a deliberate and painful self-mutilation of the arrogant, over-leveraged ego. By cutting it open, you expose your vulnerabilities, your fears, and your weaknesses, not as a sign of defeat, but as a necessary preparation for rebirth. You're clearing the rotted foundation to make way for something new and far more resilient. Only when this bloated, cowardly ego is allowed to die can a new, more powerful self be born from its ashes. This is where we encounter the second pillar of Bushido, courage, yearns. We often associate courage with heroic, dramatic acts. But in this context, true courage is the quiet, relentless determination to keep living under circumstances that feel more difficult, more painful than death itself. It is the courage to wake up each morning when your personal market has hit rock bottom, face a world that sees you as a failure, and to take one small, disciplined step forward. This is the grueling, unglamorous work of reconstruction, and it requires a fortitude far greater than that needed to close a multi-billion-dollar deal. It is the courage to persist in the face of absolute despair. To sustain this courage, you must cultivate the composure of a warrior, the unshakable calm of a master strategist facing extreme market volatility. When new challenges arise, and they will, you must train yourself not to panic. Panic leads to emotional decision-making, to fire sales of your remaining emotional and mental capital. Instead, you must strive to maintain an inner equilibrium, a centered presence that allows you to analyze the situation objectively and identify new pathways, new opportunities that are invisible to the panicked mind. As you navigate the intense pressure and pain of this period, your ability to remain composed will be your greatest tactical advantage. This is where we integrate the third pillar, humanity or benevolence, jin. In the scorched earth of your personal landscape, it is easy for the toxic weeds of hatred, bitterness, and resentment to grow. You must actively fight this. You must strive for compassion, not as a weakness, but as a strategic tool for self-preservation. This compassion must, first and foremost, be directed towards yourself. You cannot rebuild your life while simultaneously waging a war of self-loathing. Forgiving yourself for past failures is not an abdication of responsibility. It is a necessary step to heal your psychological wounds and preserve the core of your humanity, which is the engine of your future growth. After this period of healing, of internal restructuring and deleveraging, the actual process of rebuilding can begin. But this time you will not build on the shifting sands of material wealth or fleeting status. You will build on a foundation of virtue. You will rebuild your life, starting with the core principles of honesty, humility, and courtesy. This is your new seed capital. Honesty in all your dealings, humility in your approach to others, and courtesy even to those who may look down on you. These are not just quaint moral platitudes. They are the foundational pillars of a life that is structurally sound and immune to the kind of catastrophic collapse you have just endured. A life built on this foundation is more solid, more durable, and ultimately more valuable than any portfolio of stocks, bonds, or real estate. It is the only truly diversified anti-fragile asset you can possess. Therefore, understand this critical market insight. Your collapse is not the end. It is not a bankruptcy. It is a liberation. You have been forcibly divested of the burdens of expectation, the pressures of maintaining an image, the golden handcuffs of a life that was perhaps not your own. You are now a free wanderer, a ronin in the corporate and social world, unbound by prior allegiances or a predetermined path. This is your opportunity to conduct the ultimate due diligence on yourself, to rediscover your core values, your true passions, your authentic mission. See the catastrophic failure not as a destructive fire, but as the falling of cherry blossoms, which die beautifully to fertilize the soil for a new season of life. Your past life has been razed to the ground, but on that cleared land, you are now free to build something magnificent, something true. You are no longer just an investor or a businessman. You're a warrior, reborn from the ashes, and your greatest venture lies ahead. Now move forward.